got a great guest today. Some of these folks were here this same time last year. Big announcements, so who knows? Maybe we'll hear something crazy today. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But before we dive into that and all the other fun topics, let's do some introductions.
Yes.
Who are you?
Who
Papa
are you?
Bear?
Oh, wow. This is going to be an interesting podcast today. We start off with that.
Boom.
Yes. So I'm Scott Woods, president of public-private partnerships with Ready.net, which is the parent company of Broadband.money. And we're the title sponsors to the Mountain Connect conference this year.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I am Megan Beresford, Director of Broadband Programs at Learn, Design, Apply.
For a second there, you did bear. I was thinking she was going with, I thought she was like doing a bear thing.
When I interviewed her on my podcast, it was Beresford.
Beresford.
Yeah.
Beresford.
Bear. Beresford?
Bear.
Bears?
I mean, granted, I
an
feel
S.
like Scott and I had set some parameters of things we wouldn't talk about, and then Scott brought up all the things we said we wouldn't talk about.
I did not.
Such a good friend. Anyway, Director of Broadband Programs, Learn, Design, Apply. We are a grant consulting and management firm, and help with, all the broadband applications that are out there.
Money.
Money.
She gets
It's my
the
business.
I hear money's his business too, There's a sign out
money.
there.
These are both good people to know.
Yeah. And you, fine sir.
Well, thanks for having me. Brian Hollister, co-founder, CEO of Bonfire Infrastructure Group. We're a company that exists to help bring affordable broadband to all Americans because we believe it makes their lives a lot better. And our group helps every step of the way. We actually work super closely with Megan and her team on funding opportunities. We do broadband planning, helping communities figure out what's possible. And then we execute the opportunity and build it, engineer it, build it, and in some cases even operate it. So thank you for having me. It's always fun to see you guys. I'm sure this will be a fun crowd.
Well, welcome. Thank you guys for coming. So obviously lots of conversation this week about money. I've heard some interesting commentary though. I've heard that and a couple of the other guests we've had on, they've said, wow, all this money, it's never going to be spent. What do you say to that? Will it be spent?
We're not going to have enough money at the end of the day.
Spending the money's not going to be a problem.
That is the least of our issues.
I think, just having done this before, right, with BTOP with a $4 billion price tag, now that
With a
it's
B.
with a B.
B.
The small B.
Yeah.
Now, that was the largest of its kind, and now we fast forward. The money will be spent, right? And you look, and I agree with Hollywood over here, that it's not going to be enough, but I think it's enough to make a significant impact. And it's going to be a catalyst for what comes next.
So
right?
what will come next?
I'm charging people to think about this as the significant down payment for transformational opportunity for our communities as we move forward, right? So this is not the end, it's the beginning.
We're buying the broadband house. We're just getting a down payment.
Absolutely.
All
right.
Yeah, I think it will be spent. I think what we are all hoping doesn't happen is that in an effort to get it all out, there, states go the easy route of saying, these big players know what they're doing, so let's give them all the money, right? I think that's the easy out that historically just hasn't worked, right?
So all you listening, do not big players, go for the small players.
But I think so. It will be spent. It's, is it spent in the way that, we ideally want it to go? Which
is what?
I think which is in making sure that those who are best suited to provide service in communities are the ones that get the funds. I think that's one reason I'm a big proponent of.
She's only had one sip, guys.
Oh,
and
gosh.
She's already struggling.
I was gonna look that up on Google. I didn't know that was a word. Proponent.
Just stuck on the fact that everyone seems to have a nickname, and I'm just feeling left out. I'm trying to let go of that thought, but
We can call you the Jedi.
I'll take it. But no, I think that I'm a big fan of community engagement, because I think that is where we see that the big players aren't the best choices, right? Because they're not getting that same level of community engagement that your small regional provider will, because they know the community, they're going to know how to engage with them. They're going to know what services they actually need, what their
So
folks
diversification,
want.
you're promoting diversification.
Yeah, which I mean, I think, I think what we've seen is that when we don't have that, that's when things don't happen, right? Because I think the desire to actually serve those communities comes from those regional providers. They're a part of the community. AT&T is like, oh yeah, that place over there, sure, we'll get to it sometime. There's no incentive.
Maybe.
There's no maybe. Yeah.
Depending on where you are.
TBD.
Well, I think the challenge, if you think about it, is, and I've even been at fault at this too. Used to be working for Tier 1 AT&T back in the day, Bell South. That's how actually Nick and I met each other way too many years ago. Is that we as the carriers felt like we knew what was best for the community. We will engineer it the way we want to engineer it. We're going to build it where we want to build it. And we never asked for any feedback from the community. During the lunch, I thought it was really cool that panel was talking about all the work that they were doing, but it was almost in reverse. They were asking the community what they needed. They were asking the community, where would it be good for us to put a hot spot in the public? That kind of blew my mind, because we never do that. We build it where we think it's the best place to build, where we have an asset, where it's the cheapest. That's just been our mindset from the industry. So I think to Megan's point it is about that community engagement, and this is going to be different. I believe the government wants this to go a lot different this time, and they're not going to be rolling out a lot of this money without a partnership with the community. And in this case, the community, they may want to own that asset. They may want to operate that asset. So I think what's really going to be cool is there's a major evolution happening in the space, and it's exciting. We purposely don't like to work with Tier 1s. They're not nearly as fun as working with these small communities. We just get so much more of a personal impact working with these communities, and these communities, they're fired up. They want to figure out how to make it happen, but they do need a lot of help, obviously. So I'm excited because we're seeing all kinds of new types of service providers popping up, right? Whether it's a sovereign nation wanting to, build and own their own asset, or a municipality. And, open access is obviously something fun to talk about. And it's a great way for a community to own a strategic asset that's super important to them, but also not directly compete with private enterprise, right? Open that asset up. If you think about communities, they do a lot of infrastructure really, really well. My trash gets picked up at the same time every single week. My power always works. My water always works. But those communities, they never go inside your home, ever. So that's a major shift. Open access is the ability for them to own that asset that they're really good at.
And I would challenge you, it's great that maybe our communities are like that. There are some communities where they're trashed up. They don't get picked up on time. And their water always doesn't work. And I think that's the difference in the focus of this. It's really, how do we reach the unserved and underserved communities?
So let's geek out a little bit. I know Megan likes to go do this kind of thing. So the government is trying to do things differently. They're trying to put more rules in place, the check boxes, to get money, right? And that's true as well, right? So are some of those rules, or what are some of those rules that are trying to create diversity in who gets the money within the community, right? So are they trying to match the community, how the people that are serving the community more like the community themselves versus, again, like the AT&Ts as a major, they're just kind of a faceless company.
I think we have to recognize there's a federalism issue as well, right?
Oh,
States' rights for federal rights. Because yes, the money is coming federal, but states have a lot of influence. And so where are states going to, make their rules, make their changes? How is some of that going to be separate from a broadband office versus the politics of that state, right? I think there was something in Washington that got smushed because it was only going to allow municipal applicants. They're like, BEAD money will only go to munis and PUDs. And they were like, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. And so, but I think we do see that with
You mean politics impacted something?
politics, are right? And
Well,
so,
come on.
and so I think, right? I think
Crazy talk.
Business?
Business?
What is that?
No.
what? No
way.
way.
Come
No way.
on.
But I think that's an issue worth acknowledging, right? Because I think that this program was put together, as Scott says, to target those communities. Are the states getting behind that?
Because broadband offices, the people that are running them they're appointed, right?
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Some of them are state employees. Some of them are appointed.
Does that make a difference? So, I mean, let's say
Makes a
and
big
that's-
difference.
Yeah, no,
Makes a
from
big
a
difference.
state level. So how does that impacting kind of how that money, that distribution goes to the communities?
Ultimately, we don't know about the distribution, but a state broadband office director who's appointed by the governor, I mean, obviously there are political realities versus one that is the highest ranking or high ranking state career employee.
Yep.
It just comes with a different set of requirements, and we can't ignore the politics, but we also are lucky in that broadband is one of those issues that has bipartisan support. It's not as political, right?
Yeah.
The issues around broadband is, well, do you allow your service provider to control and determine how this is going to be deployed, or are we going to go in, a more partnership level, or let the community decide, how they want, the public money to be spent. So I think that is more the nuance than it is, purely on the political level. But if you talk to, we work with, a lot of the state broadband offices, some who are appointed, some who are the highest, one of the highest ranked state employees, and their mandates are quite different. Their knowledge base and set is also quite different as well. So,
Absolutely.
How do you think then, I mean, to that point, like there's been a lot of conversation this week about education, and that I've heard the comment that some of the decisions are being made by people that don't have the knowledge, which is, I think it's not political. I think everybody can agree broadband is a right and everybody should have broadband. I don't think that's a political debate. The how, I think, obviously is, and where the money gets. So how do you educate people? How do you get to those people that are like, wow, I mean, you really need to know a lot more to be able to make an educated decision about what's happening, how to build your network, where to go, who to use, where to get the money.
one word, partnership. That's why partnerships are so important. That's why, working with Bonfire and a number of other companies that's part of their mission is that no one community, ISP, you name it, can do it alone. The only way to accomplish this is partnership. And everyone brings something different to the table. But that community education, that bureaucratic education, right, all of that is very important because let's be honest, this money's not going out anytime soon. It's going to be a while. Money's been allocated. It's been announced.
Hey, you just said it was a down payment. It was a down payment.
It's a down payment, right?
Yeah.
But there's some requirements that have to be met. There are processes and boxes, bureaucratic boxes that have to be checked. But ultimately, we want to get to where we need to, which is we want to ensure that no communities are left behind, right? And to do it the right way, we have to be deliberate. We have to be intentional. But we also have to get it right and make sure that we're not wasting money. I don't want to throw all tier ones, under the bus. Most of them are pretty. No, I mean they cherry pick. They have different business models.
Yeah,
right?
they have different
They
goals.
have business
They have
models
different
that particularly ignore the needs of the least served in the community because of our return on investment.
Yeah.
So then
They're
why would I
for-profit,
then
yeah.
turn around because I have a pot full of money and then give this money to someone that ignored the community in the first place? That's not really savvy business sense.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that people know in the community is, well, when I went for you 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you told me to kick rocks. And now you want to tell me you want to serve me. Not only kick rocks, but kick rocks in a pandemic. And so now I'm just going to take your service and you're going to do good. So I just think it creates more of an opportunity for, more companies, more local service providers who know the community, who have business models that will support the demographics and the type of communities that we want to bring up into this new age digital economy that we have. So I'm excited
It's-
about it.
it's-
I don't mean to be Nancy negative, but
Oh,
it's
come
the
on, Papa
reality
Bear. You're
of
not.
it is,
Yeah, I mean,
know,
you can't.
right? I got on the
You
pink
got
blazer.
pink. I
can't
mean,
drink.
it's good. You're not. No Nancy negative
I'll
here.
drink to that.
Yeah.
No, but you hit the nail on the head, though. This mission, it's just so much bigger than any one company or any one individual, right? So if you're out there talking to folks and you're not getting this kind of, collaborative engagement, then go talk to somebody else, right? I mean, we do this stuff every day so we can constantly get this message out, right? We love talking about this. I mean, we're so fortunate to be in an industry that we're so passionate about because we're impacting lives. And so it is about partnership but there's really great momentum happening. Like the collaborativeness now is at a whole new level, even just from like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, it's amazing. I don't ever hardly talk about competition anymore. I don't think about competition, right? It's like if we're competing on a project, I win it or someone else wins it. Next thing you know, we're turning to the other person and saying, hey, let's still work together because we need more people, right, to make this happen. And like you said, Scott, this is a down payment. We need so much more money to actually do what they want to do, maybe double or triple or quadruple. The last 5% will cost so much money. It could cost as much as the rest of the 95.
And I want to just say for the record, this is salmon, not pink. So just wanted to correct that.
Touche.
Yeah.
Hey, okay.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to the
Yeah.
salmon.
All right, so partnerships is key. Getting to the right people, getting to the right communities, super important. What's unsaid right now? You guys are some of the smartest people I know in this industry. Let's keep it real. What's unsaid right now? We there's panels going on, there's conversations, but like, hey, what are people not talking about, or what?
I can take this one.
I was like, we'll let Scott lead on this one.
Honestly, politics can derail all of this.
Yes.
Honestly, and to be specific, Washington D.C. politics can derail all of this. So,
You mean when they freeze, they can't talk and they don't know what to do next?
or they can claw the money back. That they can. There's a lot of things that they things that politics with the big P can impact all of this. Hopefully it won't, but it is an election year, and it's coming up on another election year next year, national election. So, I've learned in D.C. you just hope the common sense people prevail, that this doesn't get swept up in politics, because what we're going to do together is going to impact our country, and our companies, but it's going to impact everyone. It's not just going to impact a certain segment or group of people. If we do this the right way, America as a country will be better for it. We'll be more competitive globally. So I hope this doesn't get swiped up in politics, but politics could derail all of this.
So what do you say to the people that say, well, wow, we've been teetering on a recession, we've got economic uncertainty, you have the tech sectors, lots of activity there. Why does we keep subsidizing broadband? Now, I know the answer to this question.
okay.
No,
Yeah.
I get it. I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
why?
but I mean, there's
Why?
people, but there are. But I bring it up because it is that's the political issue. Is people are saying, well, hey, there's a pot of money. Where does that money go? I think all of us are educated enough to know that broadband is a right and it's something that affects economies. But like, we have to address the elephant in the room to say, like, hey, there's only so much, and it's going to be moving around.
Well, and I think something that comes to my mind is, we were talking earlier about education and making sure folks are aware of it, but the education behind it, right? So if people are like, oh, tech or oh, economy things, it's like, well,
You're going to pull a Jedi mind trick on
broadband
them.
can handle these things. Broadband will make all these things that you're talking about better, right? And that's behind it.
It's an enabling technology, right?
And so,
But I mean, I'll challenge that though. That there's so much conversation about the build, and this and that, but we don't really talk about the actual the use, like what is being used, right? Because I mean, everything here, like a lot of stuff, is about building a network, enabling a network, operating a network. But at the end of the day, all those things you just said are about like what do you do day to day? Like how do I do my Zoom call? How do I go to school? How do I check in on my grandma? Like
Until you can't do it, right? So during the pandemic, there are people who couldn't do schoolwork.
Right.
They couldn't check in on family, right? So is that a public failure or a market failure, right? I think it's
I don't know.
both. I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's a public failure and a market failure. And so there's a market failure in that. There's a segment of the service providers that, because of the impact of the type of people, the communities that we're talking about, they just didn't fit to build. But from a public standpoint, we've got communities that absolutely were devastated in COVID. And it's all because of inequality, and we just can't stand for that. So the government steps in to correct a market failure by investing money, or some people say subsidy, to correct something that should be corrected, which is, at a minimum, everyone should have quality, robust access to broadband for a number of different purposes, namely education, like vaccines, right? Yeah. You look at the communities that could just sign up to get a vaccine, not politicizing it at all, but in the communities that didn't. I mean, those are the ones that had the highest death rates for COVID, and we're supposed to be okay with that. From a public good standpoint, no. Right.
So
to add on to that, 1 second though, think about healthcare alone. Think about how much money we spend. And I think just what this last year, we had our first decline in the essence of how long we live on average.
Yeah.
And of course,
US, yeah.
Exactly. So we've always been progressing. We just took a step back. Well, why is that? A lot of reasons. However, one of the biggest aspects is getting access, right? Equal access to healthcare. And if you live outside of a city, it's super hard to get access to healthcare. So if you now can have the ability to have a telehealth session and have a video conference with your doctor, potentially half or more of those visits, right, don't need to be in person, right? And as a lot of the rural population is actually aging, right, because a lot of younger folks, because there's not access, move to cities, think about the impact on cost, right? We constantly hear about how expensive America's healthcare is. This right here in this one piece probably could pay for all of this build to get it 100%. Right? And when we went a few years ago, traveled the world to learn about open access and how it was happening in other countries, it's amazing how many countries have already solved their divide. They're 10 years ahead of us, right? In South Africa, 97% have fiber, right? And Sweden, so many other areas in the same high numbers. And when they talk about the pandemic, in a lot of ways, the impact was not nearly as severe as ours. Right? Because they had access. I mean, obviously some people lost jobs because they weren't able to work remote, but you still had now the ability to still have equal access to healthcare. I mean, that's huge, right? And when you don't, that becomes a huge, costly burden to the country.
Yeah, if you even just, preventative care.
Exactly.
So not necessarily even when something is wrong, but your regular appointments. I mean, one thing when we're writing grants, when we find the statistics, is the amount of money spent on hospital visits and how many of those could be, handled if folks had preventative telehealth care. And I would say, for people who are concerned, about certain economic factors, and we're thinking of, we're having a big generation about to retire, that's going to be a big strain on things. There's so many different ways that having internet access can help ease that burden of a huge, I hate saying boomers, but at the same time, boomers, like as they're all, as a big generation is retiring. Nick, I feel like all those things you mentioned that people talk about, and it's just public awareness of people see this money being put towards broadband and providing the context of it, right? And when we're talking about, all sorts of things, and it's not just, it's everyone. When we're talking about adoption, it's putting it in context communities, right?
So what are some of the new rules though? Like with the down payment, has anything changed in the last year of the requirements to get the money? Like what are some of those things that are forcing forcing that kind of the community engagement, the community education? Is there anything changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's NTIA in its wisdom, and I don't mean this specifically. No, in its wisdom, no, required local coordination. Like that, it's a requirement. It's not an option. It's a requirement. Now, there's some states that do local coordination better than others. There's some that have better relationships, but it's requiring to Brian's point earlier. Can I call you Hollywood? Hollywood's point earlier, going now to the community and documenting the need first and getting feedback from the community first is such important. It's very important. It's a very important step, and I applaud NTIA for that. Because they could have just said, states, you give out the money and don't even try to document how you reach unserved and underserved community and tribes and how you document that feedback and make sure you include that in the plan that you submit to us for consideration, right? I think that's very important. And then also I don't want to also ignore the fact that there's a lot of private money that's going to be invested in this as well, right? So this is a down payment that's a catalyst for even more investment and more economies of scale as we move forward away from BEAD. So 10 years from now, hopefully, we're talking about a new round of investment into American infrastructure to reimagine what our communities look like now that there's robust broadband infrastructure and digital equity programming and workforce development. Now we're talking about what the uses are.
Yeah.
What are the applications?
Yeah.
Like what can we do now that we couldn't do 5 years ago or 10 years ago? You'll see a exponential shift in how cities and local communities and agriculture and rural communities, how they're able to thrive. So think about like that classic sci-fi movie, right? That's where we're going, right? That's where we're going.
Like our sci-fi.
It's true. We're right there, right? Technology enables that imagination for what our cities and our localities
maybe we should have a campaign, a sci-fi science fiction campaign about broadband to help educate people.
I think there are opportunities
And
to
it
put
could be
broadband
like Jedi
in
Master,
pop
Papa
culture.
Bear, and Hollywood.
I mean,
We got to explain these nicknames, right? We have to explain these nicknames.
well, but I think there's such an opportunity to put broadband into pop culture to like make it relevant for everyone. And I think not only that, but get the nuances of it understood, right? I keep thinking, I saw this yesterday on Instagram. There was
that defined source that we all go
I
to
know.
for.
That's where I get my news.
That's as
No,
about as
but
reliable as
it was-
TikTok
it
and
was-
Threads.
It was
and
some
X.
sort of post of someone saying, their neighbor was, didn't have the income to sign up for internet, but also had the pride of not wanting to, take any handouts or be ACP. And so they had like changed their network name to something making it sound public and like let their neighbor use it. And I was like, that's great, but that doesn't get to the core of the issue, right? Like, good on them, like, a nice little stopgap for it, but that's not the core of the issue. And so I think there's an opportunity to use all of these platforms to spread that knowledge. And so far, I don't see anyone doing that. And maybe now I'm putting it on myself and I need to become a TikTok personality and you guys won't see me here anymore. But I think there's
Hey, they have
a big opportunity
They have
lost,
Miss Excel on
But I
TikTok.
think-
You could be Miss Grant.
right. I think there's an opportunity to kind of have this awareness. And certainly as we see younger people becoming more active in politics, like making sure that they understand this part, right? I think is critical just as much as making sure my grandma understands it, making sure that young people get what we're trying to do, and that means reaching them through the sources they're on, right?
Well, I think in the reality is when you think about young people too, like we talk all about fiber and this and that. They don't give a shit about that stuff. Like they don't know, but they don't, right? Like it's
They should though,
But I think in a way they do.
because at some point it matters to you.
I mean,
right?
I think in a way
know,
they
but
do,
they-
right? When you put it in context of their gaming, right? Are they able to do
You put it in that context.
right? Like if you think
Try
about
turning
your
off the Wi-Fi
Exactly.
access to somebody that's gaming.
so
that's
yeah, they're
under
going to care
18.
about fiber when they realize like this is the way I'm keeping it on is by having my fiber. Like I think
usually when you have fiber, you keep it through. But yeah, that's
Yeah, it's not.
bump. No, too much.
Yeah, a little too technical.
Yeah.
No, but what's really cool about getting the young getting the young people involved now is happening for a couple of reasons. One, this youngest generation coming into the workforce now more than ever wants purpose and mission,
Yes.
and they want to make an impact. Well, obviously, this is huge, right? This is like building the highway system back in the day. Think of what the impact was, there, and how much of a level of effort that was. This is the same exact thing happening all over again. I love the wisdom comment too, Scott. I mean, every single other time monies went out, there's never been coordination like this. And it will actually slow this money down to get out, but it's going to have a lot more of an impact in so many different ways, because you're forced to go work with them, understand needs, and really engage with this community. And that's where we need a lot of young people. We always talk about this is a village. We need everyone involved. And those are the really big things that I think is what is so exciting about this. Local coordination, getting young people excited, because a lot of people in telecom, we've been around for a while. We need a lot more young people to come in and carry this torch, because this thing is still going to take another 10 or 20 years to ultimately complete.
So how do you, but to that point, right? The U.S., I always use the analogy that the U.S. is like a very rich teenager driving a Corvette. But the country's got a lot of money, is very young, but, a little bit of risk takers, right? So, but always wanting instant gratification. So now this does take time. Broadband takes a long time to get built out. What do you tell the people of these communities that are like...
Who gave you that analogy? I really don't like it.
Corvette.
Is that from your grandma? If so, I apologize to your grandma. But
You had a Corvette? Like, my God, I rode a bike.
I had a Camry. I had a Toyota Camry.
Honestly, yeah.
How did you go for one?
Driving in the Pinto, like, what?
We had a lime green Pinto, but then it got hit and no.
But I feel like, I'm, making jokes, but I'm going to come in here, being all hot, but I think that's part of the problem.
It's cold in here.
I think those analogies are part of the problem in that we're not looking at equity. That's not an analogy that applies to the United States. That applies to a small portion of the United States. But when we look at the number of people,
the people.
The analogy used a Corvette. Who has a Corvette? Like you lose.
I was
people.
I was using that as the country, because the country is a country.
But it's a perfect analogy, because it is people who can relate to that, and then there's people who can't relate to that.
Well, it was just like my comment earlier about, hey, the trash is always getting picked up at the same time. He's like, well, in your neighborhood.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, yeah, you're right. I live in I'm fortunate, a nice neighborhood, right? And a lot of tax money in that neighborhood. And what we've learned with this is that not all neighborhoods are created equal. And there's major challenges. And, on your panel today, we talked about, fair, and equitable outcomes, right? And that's the difference now.
And could it not equal outcomes?
Equitable.
Equitable. That's the difference. Yes. Right? No one's trying to make sure that everybody gets the same thing, but it's the process by which you get there. Like I made the analogy before. I grew up playing tennis in the inner city. Now, this is public courses, right? And I would go play matches in the suburbs, and their public courses look like country club courses, right? The matches, right? The tennis facilities. These are public. Now, I'm not talking about the country club where you pay for that right and that access. That's different. But why do the public tennis courts in the suburb areas are so much better than the public courses in the city, right? What if they were the same? Now, what you do with your private money in country club, absolutely. But that's the difference. And so let's make sure on broadband, we make sure that everyone has a certain level of access. Now, what you want to afford, if you want to go, the mega platinum, XPON, G, whatever you want to do, that's fine.
It's called Hollywood
But there
speed.
should be a base minimum of access that ensures that everyone can do what they need to do when they need to do it. School, telemedicine, work, entrepreneurial, you name it. It shouldn't be that our side of the town has fiber and then this side of the town can't even get 25/3. That's just not fair. It's not equitable. Right, so we're not talking about equal outcomes, equal results. We're talking about equitable processes to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be successful.
So let me ask a question of time, right? So you guys keep talking about it. This is the first tranche, the down payment. It's going to take time to build all this. But like, the longer this takes, the harder it is on those communities, right? The longer, the worse it gets. And as the society moves forward, the demand to have internet access and broadband in general keeps going up, not down. So what can, so I mean, so one, what do you tell people? Two, how the hell do you speed all this stuff up? Why does it take, like, why can't we speed it up? There's all these smart people. Why can't we move faster?
This shit is hard.
Where do we start? Where do we start?
We got a lot of answers on this one.
This shit is hard. This shit is hard. It's not easy to do. And one of the things, I don't want to hog up all the spotlight in my salmon blazer, but one of the issues I had with the selection of the speed threshold is it doesn't reflect what we need in the future when these networks are completed. So, right, 120 may have worked 2 years ago. It's not going to work 5 years from now. And it's definitely not going to work 10 years from now. So, again, I just think, this shit is hard to do, right? This is not easy.
Yeah.
We can do it. We're equipped to do it, but it does take time. It does take time. We're going to have 56 different ways on a state and territory basis that each state and territory is going to attack this issue.
Okay.
So that's going to take some time.
I mean, just when you're building, I mean, there's so many different facets to this, but, you know, we just finished up a particular project on a reservation, and it's serving, you know, ultimately a few thousand homes. I think we went through 11 different jurisdictions for permitting and ultimately 289 different permits. Every one of those has to get approved. So that's just one major complication. Two is people, right? This is not like AI driven. We need boots on the ground in these areas. And where we're talking about making this happen are difficult areas to live in typically, right? I mean, they're just not to live, but they're less populated, right? And there's just less resources. And so we're having to bring those resources there. And now there's a lot of competition happening for these resources. Back in the day, all the people that did a lot of the construction, they traveled. They all own, you know, their fifth wheel, mobile home, whatever, and they love that life. And now it's like, well, why would I do that? Because I could just work right here at home, because there's activity happening everywhere. And everyone in our industry is already really busy. And this is like a monumental add-on to what's already happening. So we need people, we need more suppliers. We need more of the local municipalities to continue to get educated so they can work on permitting reform, right? Make it easier. You know, we have a project right now. I can only permit 1,000 feet at a time. It's going to take forever, right? And so there has to be a lot lot of changes.
Maybe we need some AI generated.
AI generated permitting processes. Like, let's go. Yeah.
I think that it's going to take a lot of coordination that we haven't seen before to make sure that this gets done in the way it needs to get done. I mean, permitting is just, you know, one example, right? Like when we're talking the environmental parts, when we're talking about historic preservation, right? There's a lot of different parties, and I think historically they haven't worked well together. And so I think, you know, there needs to be sometimes a mind shift for these parties of let's put this in context of to why you're doing this thing.
Maybe they should have some beers together and just work it out.
That's always a great way to start.
I mean, just saying, you know.
But yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be a mind shift of, you know, all the parties involved and what it means to be a part of the work.
And I think ultimately what we're talking about is how do we manage expectations, right? Yeah. There's the immediate need for gratification, but this is going to take some time. But we're going to be better for it. So do you hurry up and wait, or...
So the theme is it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
Because marathons are hard and they take a long time.
And if you're a track parent, that sprint is, you're there and you're not there. And you're mad as hell because you waited 3 hours for your kid to run 20 seconds, and then you're done, right? So, no, let's change our mindset. This is an investment. It's going to take some time. But, there are things that we can do in the interim, as Megan talked about, the community education piece. There's technology that you can do as bridge technology to bring better broadband.
Yeah, it's fixed wireless.
Absolutely. In the
100%.
interim,
Yeah.
that will give better broadband, but not quite what you will get. So there are things that you can do to supplement the waiting period. But ultimately, we're talking about transforming communities that have been disinvested in, right, that have been redlined, right? So to correct all of that is going to take some time. And this is the construction piece, as Brian knows. You just don't pull up and just start, digging a trench and boring and fiber. There's some bureaucratic loops that you got to jump through.
We're going to get AI driven construction trucks.
And you never do it well until somebody comes out and they ask you, what the hell are you doing digging up my front yard? When technically you're in the right of way. So, that's a whole nother issue.
But think about it, when we talk about, one thing that we don't talk about a lot is, we can lots of times figure out how to make that happen in terms of the construction and all that piece. But when you're doing a big build in an area, it's a heavy weight for the community to support it, right? The permitting, doing all the location, of all the assets and the facilities. I mean, that's actually one of our biggest challenges today. And those are not the people that we can employ. Those are city people, right? So we try to do all types of things, even give them equipment to try and go do these things, locating services, stuff like that, but they still have to facilitate the people. Right? And then the location companies, they can't keep up. So they need people. So, we need a lot more people, to get involved in this industry to really make this happen.
Well, guys, your insight has been invaluable, as always, and entertaining. I want to end on...
Wait, we're ending?
We can keep going if you want.
Okay.
No, I wasn't going to end. I was going to...
A whole lot of stuff we can talk about.
No, hey.
Oh, we go on forever.
I know. You guys, we get another round here. Let's actually just have a little fun, though, since science fiction is a topic that's come up quite a bit in the last couple of days, and something I think we can all appreciate relative to technology and broadband. So what is your favorite science fiction character that you think that would, most aptly describe where you think technology will go? Because you talk about the future. So what's the character or movie or book that's like, hey, this is analogous to where we can go with doing all this?
I'm really lost by that question. I don't know what I could talk about some favorites. I think so.
All right,
I'm switching up.
Wait, how much beer you had?
I know. Well, I'm switching it up to which sci-fi character do I think, if they were here, could make this process a lot better?
Oh, see, that's why.
This is why we have her on the show all the time.
You're a great, I think.
So for me, I'm going to say, now that I posed the question, I have to think about it. But I would say something that first
Darth
comes
Vader.
to mind. No, not Darth Vader, but I was thinking in the Star Wars realm, who was very good at that kind of getting people on board.
Darth Vader.
And
Obi-Wan
so
Kenobi.
At first I thought Obi-Wan Kenobi, but now I'm thinking
Yoda.
maybe Han Solo, right? Because Han Solo, came... he's got a long backstory. I know.
I think we should go Yoda.
There's a long backstory, right? But I think he was able to relate to a lot of different people. He was doing the right thing. He was able to get other people to do the right thing, right? And I think he could come.
He could speak Wookiee, too.
Especially if it's like the Harrison Ford version, and then half the female population will be like, oh, broadband, yes, right? But I think
depending on your perspective, yeah.
Maybe some other parts of the population, I don't know. I think a character like that from sci-fi. So Han Solo, I think Captain Kirk could do that.
I was gonna go with Star Trek franchise.
I feel like Captain Kirk could do that.
Yeah.
You gonna go with Kirk?
I like the Star Trek franchise, right? Like
Jean-Luc Picard.
Hey, make it so, right? No, I think again when you're a little kid and you think about you start thinking about how technology impact. I was a big Star Trek.
Yeah, I love Star Trek.
But I love that you could talk. The computer talk back. You can say, computer, give me another beer, and you got another beer.
Yeah.
Computer, give me. Okay, we're not there yet, but
Wouldn't that be
when you
cool?
start thinking about applications and equity and how technology can transform communities, I think about two things. On one end, I think Terminator, like we're activating Skynet. That's gonna, try to. We had killer robots here at Mountain Connect that didn't really pan out as a killer robot, but it sounded good. And then Star Trek on the other end, when you're thinking about beam me up. I've got phasers. Everybody on the ship is from somewhere else, and they all speak a common language. If you believe that, right? I mean, it was great. It's like this poly-utopia of
They all had Google Translate.
Google Translate on their watches, right? But again, it allows you to imagine. And then on the other end, it's the Terminator, right? It's the future comes back to the past, and we're trying to. I guess we're off track now.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're a little wishy-washy on which way. Yeah.
I don't even know what I could add to that.
I'm gonna talk nicknames. I thought we were gonna talk nicknames. That's what I thought. I don't know, but I'm not hosting.
All right. Well, all right. So we can pivot to we can end on nicknames. So
I would like to end on something
okay.
before we get to nicknames, because a year ago was when I was introduced, and it's
Oh, you're
been
gonna have an announcement, aren't you?
No, it's been a crazy year.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year.
So when I was announced last year leaving NTIA, and this was the first podcast
I know.
that I
You
had
graced
the
us.
pleasure of doing
With
at
me.
Mountain Connect with my friend Megs.
Megs.
I call her Megs. Yeah, she's Megs.
It's a
But
sci-fi show,
this whole
Megs.
year has been insanely crazy and impactful. The friends that we've made, the lives that we've touched, the friendships, the partnerships. It's been an amazing journey, and I think it's only been a year.
That's
A
crazy.
little bit more than a year.
A little bit more.
Because it was
yeah.
in May. It was
Like
in
2
May of
months
last
more.
year. But Megan and I kicked it off. And all of us have been on the speaking tours and conferences. We're trying to do business together. We're trying to bring others to the table that traditionally haven't been. This has been the most impactful year of my career personally. Wow. It's been the most impactful year professionally. And I'm just having a great time. So I'm really
Cheers to that.
appreciative that I get to come back and share it with new friends here on Beer and Broadband.
I think I could actually say the same thing. I mean, I've been in this industry my whole career, but the last couple of years has absolutely been the most fun. I mean, we've started working with tribes, municipalities, really helping them with a heavy lift, and it has been so rewarding. We're having so much fun, and we are creating so many new partnerships. My old career, was always about competition, and you hated your competitor and this and that, and I can't even remember the last time I've even mentioned the word competitor, because I don't even see anyone as a competitor anymore, and it's a unique time in our space, and it's pretty awesome.
I would say a bit of both of that, right? My previous career, I was working with the state and territory attorneys general, and a lot of times they have a lot of nice messages, but it's just that it's messages, right? And I think working in this community, even in the past year, right? I've met so many people who have actual genuine care and passion behind it, right? It's not just messages for the people who are and done something. It's not just saying it like it was, in my former profession. Like here, actually things happen and people actually mean it and believe it.
And I got a cardboard cutout.
Did your previous career give you a cardboard cutout?
Not give me a cardboard.
Life size.
I feel like we should have had those in the
We should have
backdrop.
one.
The backdrop
Right,
behind here.
absolutely.
It would have been nice. It'd be twinsies,
We're more aligned than you think. Absolutely.
But I didn't hear Megan say it was your best year. So I was like, he had a best year, you had a best year. It wasn't your best year?
It was my best year.
Oh, yeah.
This is great.
All right. Well, guys, I don't know how I can finish top that, but thank you again for joining another episode of Beer and Broadband. We will see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.